Master Gambardella with the ninth thing I learned from Royce Gracie at the recent seminar in Dallas, Texas. Number 9, when the technique is done right, it works right. It's an amazing thing to watch so many fighters trying to make a bad technique work. They will wear themselves out with incorrect technique done improperly and wonder why they lose the fight or the match. A technique that is done wrong will simply not work. You can wear yourself out trying to make it work, and your opponent can wear themselves out using poor technique to defend your poor technique. It's like watching a train wreck. Nothing good is going to come from it. The UFC is incredible to watch when the techniques are done right, and when they're done by fighters who know how to execute proper techniques. It is boring and ridiculous and stupid to watch when the techniques are done wrong by fighters who don't know what they're doing. And I'm sure you will agree that too many times recently the UFC fights are really examples of bad boxing rather than good mixed martial arts. They don't throw any good punches. They don't throw any good kicks. They never go to the ground. All they do is just keep doing stupid, bad boxing techniques. And it even gets worse. When they do go to the ground, they roll around trying insane moves they made up and miss obvious opportunities to finish or escape because their techniques are so poor and so poorly done. And these are supposedly the best martial arts fighters in the world. It is much worse at the local fights, where you will see even more ridiculous, insane, crappy techniques done by people who don't appear to know anything but street fighting and brawling, and who have won most of their fights because their opponents knew even less than them. Master Gracie, during his seminar, made it a point that the technique is done right. He also explained when and how the technique is done wrong, and how to avoid making these mistakes when you are training. I went to a seminar with John Smith, the 2-time Olympic gold wrestling medal champion. And at all the seminars, he demonstrated the technique, and he asked some students to come up and do the technique he just taught. Now, in 90% of the other seminars I've had or ever been to, where students come up and they try a technique, the instructor will correct them a little bit, let them try it again, and then correct them a little bit more, and then tell them to go sit down. Then he goes on to the next technique. The students never really demonstrate the technique properly, and when they try it, that seems good enough for the teacher doing the seminar. Now, Master Smith this was not allowed with him. And he does not allow it to the students in his wrestling program or at his seminars. When he called up 2 high school students to demonstrate a technique, they did it wrong. He said in a firm voice, "That's not right, do it again." He told them what they did wrong and showed them how to do it again. And they did it again. They didn't do it right. He said it again in a firm voice, "That's not right, do it again." This went on for about 3 to 5 minutes until the students finally did it right. Not almost right, but correctly, or 100% right. He would not let them continue to practice wrong technique, and he would not accept them doing the technique wrong. He's the same way when he teaches his wrestlers at Oklahoma State University. That's why OSU has won 5 national championships in the last 8 years. He expects and demands that all techniques are done perfect. They're done right at all times during practice. He will not allow or tolerate techniques being done wrong. He teaches and expects perfections, and his wrestlers seldom, if ever, get beat because they're doing the techniques wrong. They all do their best techniques correctly. They do them right. Practice all their techniques correctly, and when the fight is on, when the wrestling match is on, they do the exact same thing. All the techniques are done right, and when they're done right, a technique will work. Too many martial arts teachers allow their students to practice techniques that are done wrong, and then they wonder why their students don't win local tournaments. They don't seem to realize that if you allow your students to practice technique that is almost right, you will not get the same results as when you only allow your students to practice techniques that are perfect every time they do it. Master Gracie knows that if a technique is done right, it works, and if it is done wrong, it doesn't work. He has real-world experience in real-world fights that prove the techniques done right work, and to assure him that teaching things done wrong won't work. When you do a jiu-jitsu technique right, the size and strength of your opponent does not matter. When you do the technique wrong, the size and strength do matter. And when you do the technique wrong, the size and strength matter completely, because he will now beat you. Do the technique right and the elbow will snap, or they'll tap out. Do the technique wrong and you'll spend a lot of time fighting and using all your muscle and energy to try to muscle a finish that was started out wrong. Do the technique completely wrong and he'll always escape, reverse you, and beat you. So that's the ninth thing I learned from Master Gracie. When a technique is done right, it works. Remember that.